Yeah.
Now we're in trouble. We're being recorded.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it looks like folks did get the email about this link. So I'm hoping that other folks do check their email, because that kind of happened later this afternoon or mid-afternoon. So I'm going to maybe try and resend that just in case folks haven't gotten the new link. As there are a couple people missing. So I'll do that quick.
That might not be a bad idea.
No?
There you are.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
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 Awesome. My microphone is really giving me fits. I'm gonna have to get a new mic on here, but
There you
long as
are.
as long as it keeps working now. Somebody wanted to know if I was still at ACA. I am, but I gave my notice. My last paid day is April Fool's Day.
Okay.
Hey, Carla.
Carla.
Hi.
Yay. Good to see you.
I can't see all of you. I got to figure out okay, I can now.
Okay. Wow.
Well, we've got almost everybody. That's good.
So is all of us are remote? Is there anybody? So Leo's the only one that's going to be actually there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mike, we missed you at the meeting at lunchtime. We started and then we were hoping that you were going to join us.
I thought it was at noon, so I hung out around noon. Then I thought it was at 12:30. And at 12:45, I said, I'm gonna go for a hike. That's what I did.
Probably a better choice.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dan McCall. I'm going to be the Tim O'Connell in the room. And I don't know, can the camera see?
No, can't see me yet.
Leo's here. He's right next to me.
I want to see Leo too. Lean in, Leo.
Well,
Maybe we should switch seats.
Hi, Leo.
You baby.
hi, everybody.
Leo.
It's good to see your faces, everybody.
It's good to see you.
The faces that I'm looking at a little iPad here, and it's about 6 feet away, and your faces are about a ½ inch high. So squinting a little bit.
Hey,
Deb.
that's probably just as well.
We look good from that distance.
It'd be a little frightful. And
There's
full
Carla.
size. Oh,
It's good.
man.
It's good to see all of you folks.
Problematic. You can see where? Down here. Oh, it came out there? That works.
Wouldn't it have been cool if we had this technology back when we were planning these events?
I
No
know.
kidding.
Yeah.
Conference calls and stuff like that.
Well, the nice thing too, Andy, is I think, are there like 100 people that are registered for the conference online?
Yeah, the actual number viewing at any time has usually been in the upper teens or low 20s, but there were 100 people eligible to participate, and probably that many came and went. I saw some of our grad students from here at different times, but never a huge cluster of them all at once.
Okay.
So it may have been that for a number of those group packages that they offered.
Well, I'll say this again when we get everyone here. I've only been here since 3 o'clock, but these folks have done us all proud. You guys would be impressed with the quality of the papers that are being presented here today.
Good.
Nice.
We're looking at 2 of them there.
So, it may be a little awkward, but I've turned your screen off. You won't be able to see yourself.
That's
here.
great. I don't need to see much.
Great.
Hi, Alan.
So Brad, I'm gonna shut your personal one down and start.
You're
Tomorrow,
muted,
would
Alan.
like something to drink?
Um,
Alan, you're on mute.
Are you trying to talk?
you're on mute, Alan.
Yeah, it's the laptop sitting on that little.
There,
Yes.
Here you are.
so we haven't changed in 20 years.
Not
You
one of
want
them.
a bit.
You all look
20.
exactly the same. When I,
We're filming.
well, like all Zoom meetings, it seems as though you end up talking over yourselves or interrupting yourself back and forth. But anyway, it's nice to see you all. Hi, Camille.
This is what this thing looks like.
It's nice to see all these familiar faces.
Hey, Camille.
Hey, Camille.
Hi.
Leo, you're by a fireplace of some sort. Where are you?
Well, I'm in, this is a wonderful facility here. We're in a room that is surrounded by windows. It would probably seat about 50 people in it probably. And there's a huge fireplace right behind me. I don't know the building, but it's a very beautiful building. Andrew is coming up right next to me here.
Hello.
It's hard.
Hey, Andrew.
I'm not on anything. I don't think I'm on.
No, you're on. I turned your window off so you won't see. They can see.
They can see us.
Thank you for being here. We miss you all.
Well, thank you. We miss you too. It was a little far, a little hard to get to, and COVID issues.
Yes. We're in Weatherford Hall at YMCA Blue Ridge Assembly. And we're going to, I don't know if Tim already shared with you, but we're going to announce at the end of the Fireside chat that we'll be back here in 2 years.
Okay, cool.
So, yeah.
Cool.
It's a full facility.
I want to sit next to the fireplace.
Well, the only downside is the fire's not going, Alan.
Okay. Okay. Leo, are you still in Montana?
Not right now.
No, not right now. No.
Yeah, I do have, my wife and I own a house on my brother's cattle ranch about 60 miles north of Missoula. And so
Okay.
we spend quite a bit of time out there off and on during the year.
Yeah. Cool.
I just returned home late last night from spending 6 weeks in Mexico.
Mm.
So it was a nice trip. My wife and I go there for about 6 weeks each year at a little place called Isla Mujeres, which is an island off Cancun. And we did not go last year because of COVID, but we kind of took a chance this year and went. It was the COVID situation there was not nearly as bad as it is in the United States.
Okay. Okay. Mike, is there any ice out there in New Hampshire land?
There wasn't, but all of a sudden we had just huge rainstorms that froze, and the ice climbing's great right now.
Okay.
It's covered up with snow. You know, you run that risk that it's not being cold enough, and we get these freeze cycles that turn the ice into thick stuff.
Well, I've always had some thoughts of coming back out there, but I haven't made it yet.
Well, you're always welcome.
Yeah, I know.
Chris, it's nice to see you.
Nice to see you, Leo.
It's been a long time, and Camille, I haven't seen you in a long time either, so it's great to see you again.
It has been a long time.
Yes. And
I don't even know how long.
I know, I don't either.
Best not to think about that, actually. Camille, I used your study on the ropes course and your biologic as a basis of a paper I wrote a while back.
Are you still working, Alan?
My wife seems to think so, but I think I'm retired.
Well, that's a trick if you pull that off.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I must admit that I thought I would miss teaching and being in academia, and I find that I don't miss it at all. Is that wrong?
No, that's not wrong at all, Alan.
No.
That's 100% right.
I don't know how long it is before we get started. Maybe Dan can give us a heads up on that. But Tim O'Connell, just wanted to say thank you all for joining us. And just before I think the crowd gets in there, just to say to folks that, yeah, thanks for coming. And this is kind of, we do have the prepared questions. Hopefully you had a chance to take a look at those. And they are geared towards a couple people to start, but after those folks have had the chance to respond, you're more than welcome to jump in and just have a conversation. And Dan and I'll try and be lines people and officiate a bit and kind of move us along if we feel like we need to, or it's really kind of open. So this isn't like a set agenda trying to move through stuff. I think the last question about, kind of what can we do to move the coalition forward is something we would like to end with, but other than that, we're really pretty open with stuff. So yeah, I just wanted to say that and thank you so much. And I think Andy said early on, it's like, we're lucky that you're willing to talk to the group and not just kind of shut it off and talk amongst yourselves. So I appreciate everybody being here. Thanks.
And just to give you an update from the room, we've only got about 5 or 6 people. I think dinner is going late. And I think people are starting to trickle down, but, and there's a big but, we're on the left side of the door and on the right side is a table with beer. So I think that when people come in, there's going to be a little delay between getting them in the door and over here.
Hi, Camille. Is the camera on?
Yeah.
Hey, Betsy. Stick your face in there again.
On in again. Yeah, come in again.
There it is. That's the girl I know.
How are you, Doc?
Good.
I'm so glad to see your face.
I know. I'm glad to see yours too. Thanks for keeping me updated.
Yes, ma'am.
If I don't look, just start doing jumping jacks. I imagine this didn't happen at the first few CEOs. Huh?
No, there wasn't much of an electronic part to the first CEOs.
Fewer people zoomed in for this.
Well, if you have no Zooms. Overhead projectors, yes.
I want to know what everyone's doing.
Pardon?
What are you doing, Andy?
I'm doing okay. I'm in phased retirement. So I'm teaching half-time right now. And do that for up to 2 years. This is my first. And we'll see whether I do both years.
Yeah. Well, that's a good way to do it, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think it can make it easier to make the decision. Give it up all at once.
That's okay.
And it may, I'm sure if I give it up after a year, that college will be happy because I will be cheaper. It'll be cheaper without me.
What are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great. I'm I'm running a research center now at the university. I'm only teaching 2 classes a year, but my load of probably 70 outdoor behavioral care center. We're running on effective with depression, anxiety, and substance use disorder. So it's good. We got a lot of funding for that.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
We already started, I'm sorry. I know.
Are you still in Texas, Camille?
I am still in Texas. I moved to Austin, California of Texas.
Yes.
We're the donut hole. Blue donut hole in the red donut.
Yeah, get people inside. And maybe turn the volume up.
I'm sure Simon would say hi to you, Camille.
What's he doing now?
He lives up in British Columbia, right on Vancouver Island. And he's up there, trail mat, having fun doing that.
Good deal. Tell him hello for me.
I will. Is anyone still writing for Human Kinetics?
I'm not.
Is anyone writing with Human Kinetics still? There.
Okay. We need to tell.
Is that?
Yeah, yes, absolutely, yes.
Pass the money on there to speak.
Could you say something, Mike, so that we can get a test for the volume?
Sure. But I can say whatever you need for me to say.
You're doing good, right? You're doing good.
Okay.
I think that's better.
Can you all in the back hear that? Yeah. Okay.
People are still kind of filtering in, so, and then folks are chatting yet, so things have run a little bit later than usual with some of the sessions. And then dinner, as you know, CEO folks like to do a lot of chatting informally. And so dinner is stretched out a little bit longer than normal too. So it's going to take us a few more minutes to get things pulled together here. So don't any of you folks go away.
If I done that,
How's Bradford Woods doing?
yes. Carla ought to know something about that.
I don't know anything about the Indiana part of it. I mean, ACA is still located kind of at Bradford Woods. Deb knows more about that since she still is an employee of the American Camp Association, but.
I can tell you that this site has been really great and it hasn't really changed the culture of CEO. I think this is my 5th one and it feels a lot like the ones at Bradford Woods.
Yeah, I would agree too. It's been fun. Let's see if we can get those folks over there in here.
Yes, sir.
Of course, it's Andrew.
This is muted. I don't know.
Hey, Rhonda.
Chris, you look like you're sitting in the dark. We can hardly see your face.
I don't know why. I have a light on in here. Maybe I need to go get another lamp or something.
Maybe.
You know, I don't use my office that much anymore.
You look like you're in the dark, Chris. We don't want him to think that you're in the dark.
I tried shutting people and they're not being shut.
I can be forceful.
I mean, I can't see all
I think we're starting about 1 minute, just to give you a heads up. And Tim, do you want to say something at the beginning, or shall I?
I'm happy to start, and then
Good.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, if I can have everybody's attention in the room for just a minute. We're gonna get started with our fireside chat. I guess we don't have the fire on, but we are next to a fireside chat, and a lot of our guests are on the screen. And one of them is Tim O'Connell in our top right, and he's gonna start things off and address all of us. And I'm sort of gonna be his physical presence here in the room.
That is an interesting.
Physical presence, sorry.
Yeah, we don't look anything alike either, so yeah. Well, I just like to say thanks everybody for coming, and a special thanks to our panel guests here. And I think this is just a really exciting opportunity to hear from some of the folks who were around in the early days of the coalition and early days of the symposium. My name is Tim O'Connell. I'm a professor in the Department of Recreation and Leisure Studies at Brock University. I'm also on the research committee for the coalition. And most of you probably have met Dan McCole, who's in the Department of Community Sustainability at Michigan State. In a moment, I'll ask the panel participants just to introduce themselves and whatever order you'd like. But I just wanted to kind of give just a couple notes for folks. I mentioned to the panel folks, we do have questions, and we'll ask them towards or ask them to a couple of the panel folks. And feel free to join in after those people have had a chance to respond. And if you're in the audience, either face-to-face or virtual, please feel free to ask questions as we go along. And we'll rely on Dan and Brad who monitoring the chat to kind of get those in when they can. For me, I think this is just as I said, a really exciting opportunity. I did my undergrad at SUNY Cortland, and little did I know when I started there in 1987, that was when the coalition was in its infancy and just getting started. And the cool thing for me was, as well, is that in 2002 was the first time that I was able to attend the research symposium. And you know, these folks who are here to share their thoughts on the panel were, I think almost all of them were at that symposium in 2002. So it's really cool. You know, I started out as a grad student, was kind of really scared and nervous about going, and now have the opportunity to kind of chat with folks and hear their stories and hear about their experiences over the last, 25, 30 years. So without further ado, maybe I'll just, since I see Leo, maybe I'll start with Leo and ask folks to just introduce themselves and maybe tell us what your most recent affiliation has been.
I'm Leo McAvoy, and my most recent affiliation was at the University of Minnesota.
And Tim, it might be helpful if we go across the screen that the audience can see. So that would be Mike, if you could go next.
I'm Michael Gass. I'm still professor at the University of New Hampshire in a dual degree program that focuses on combining a master's in social work and a master's in adventure therapy.
And next would be Chris.
Yeah, I'm Chris Cashel. My most recent affiliation is Oklahoma State University, and I was involved with the coalition from 1995 to 2006.
Andy? You're muted. Still muted. Oh, can we unmute him? There we go.
Spacebar trick didn't work. Andy Young, I'm a professor at the State University of New York at Portland.
Carla, you're next on our screen.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carla Henderson. I was most recently associated with North Carolina State University, but I have been retired for almost 8 years now and am happily Professor Emerita. I actually do miss academia in terms of I miss my colleagues and I miss the students. I don't miss anything else about academia. But so I live in Estes Park, Colorado. I retired here, and my new I guess career is volunteering in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Great. Alan, you're next. Oh, and I think muted. Alan, you don't look muted, but we can't hear you. There's no mute button on your thing, so I'm not sure. No, still not working. Brad, do you have a suggestion? No. We could hear you earlier, Alan. I'm not sure if you did something. We'll pause for a second and go to Camille.
My name's Camille Bunting. I was at Texas A&M University.
And Deb, you're next. It says Rhonda, so I was thrown off a little bit there.
Yeah, my mic, I'm having fits with it tonight. So anyhow, I just borrowed Rhonda's laptop, so I'm going to use that. Deb Bileski, Professor Emerita from UNC Chapel Hill, which is where I did most of my coalition work. But I am still working, semi-retired, at the American Camp Association. I've been the director of research, and I'm now the senior researcher for another about 6 more weeks. And then I will happily join the ranks of the fully retired. And like Carla, I got the good message that you don't retire from, you retire to. So since I live up here in Estes Park, I'm going to retire to being a big volunteer in Rocky Mountain National Park.
We go back to you, Alan. Is any difference now? Can we try again? Yeah. The recommendation here, Alan, is for you to log off and log back in. When in doubt, reboot, I suppose. And we'll give that a try. Well, while we're waiting for Alan, I'll do a little in-room introduction. I a lot like Tim. I was a grad student at my first CEO in 2004, and came with a crew from Minnesota with Leo. Got us in the van at a certain time. There was one stop we would make between Minnesota, and it was at an Arby's to get I don't know what it was, but he had a strict schedule for us. And I remember walking in and to this amazing group of people, many of whom knew each other. Many of the people on the screen were there. They wouldn't remember me because I was just a dumb graduate student at the time. And but this conference has meant a lot to me. And my scholarship has sort of shifted away. Most of the work I do isn't a good fit for CEO, but whenever it comes around, I try to find something that I can do to be able to justify coming here. So I don't know, Alan, let's give it another try. I tried a little.
Okay, how about now? Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Excellent. Alan Ewert, I'm retired from Indiana University, and I live in Redmond, Oregon. Joined a search and rescue team, and so I'm good out here.
Well, why don't we get started with the questions? I emailed these folks earlier today, and I gave them a little update on how this conference was going. And and just saying it was awesome. It was remarkable. It was just like it always is. Amazing presentations that were energizing, made us think about things, seeing cutting edge research, seeing faculty and people in the industry and students, grad and undergrads presenting. It was CEO. And if you like this conference and if you're energized by it, these are the people who, you know, we have to thank. We're on their shoulders, right? And gratefully so. So we have some questions and we're going to do them in pairs. So the first one is for Andy and Camille. And again, anybody can feel free to chime in otherwise. But if you could tell us a little bit about the story about how CEO came about and how the founders came together to establish the coalition.
So are you asking about the coalition or about the symposium or both?
Yeah, well, let's go with the symposium, I guess.
Okay. That's simpler. The George Fuge, who I worked with here in my early years, once said the secret to success in his life was to surround himself with good people. So when it came time for this newly formed coalition to address one of its agenda items, which was advancing research, we looked to find the very best people in the field. The problems we were facing was where can you publish? You know, who is the audience for our research? Our field is so disparate. There's the environmental ed, the camping, the adventure education, that sort of thing. And so we really we launched the research agenda in some ways mirroring the process of launching the coalition, which was to talk with the best people in the field. In short, I tried to identify the people who were doing what the rest of us were struggling with. How do you get your work published? These are the people who were getting into the journals that really weren't in the habit of publishing outdoor education related research, or they were founding a new journal. They were leaders in a variety of areas of the field, whether from organized camping, AEE, or whatever. And so we basically, groups of us would meet when we would find ourselves at one of the national conventions. And we were talking about it and then ultimately thought, coming up with a symposium that would look at outdoor education in the big picture. And it would focus just on research. And it would basically kind of envisioning, you know, what you all have experienced here, the big tent of outdoor education, informal atmosphere. We're not part of a larger conference where everybody disappears and those sorts of things. So eventually we said this would be good. We needed to plan the first one. And lucky me, again, Camille Bunting was there. She really helped launch the coalition. And she was the key program coordinator. So the design of the program that, you know, the legacy of which we still enjoy today came together through the facilitation of Camille. We would get on conference calls and that sort of thing. And my work really, when we launched it, was working the logistics out with Bradford Woods, which was a wonderful host site. They were really excited about the coalition, glad to have us, treated us very, very well, and that sort of thing. So, but I can remember the conference calls and the meetings at various conferences that Camille was facilitating. Camille.
Well, as is typical and usual, Andy was much more gracious than my memory allows. My memory of the beginning of the research symposium was greatly influenced by our humble opinions that there needed to be more research in the area, and try to encourage that. And the publication sources were an issue for sure, but our main focus was to encourage research to be done and to get away from what seemed to be what everyone was wanting to do, was to measure improvement of self-esteem and branch out from there. So that was one of the emphasis areas that we had. And I don't know if y'all are going to come back to me with any questions, or if I'm going to have a chance to talk again. So I want to say something now while I have a chance.
I'm not going to stop you.
Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
If I were still involved in this, my suggestion or my idea, whether it would go anywhere or not, I have no idea, but would be to get some people together and brainstorm, what are people interested in measuring? What are the desperate areas that are going on? And I have to admit, I haven't read a journal in years, so it might be just wonderful. I don't know. But if I were still involved, I would want to have a session maybe at this conference and get people together and brainstorm areas for research. Mike sounds like he has a great program going where they might well do that. But my interest would be to try to get several different people involved in the same idea and start doing research on their own with the same research question and the same methodology, and maybe plan to get together and do that collaboratively so that different things could be done and same things could be done. And publications would come from that, from different areas and things like that. So all of you people that are there listening to this that I can't see, maybe that's an idea for you to do that. And instead of just having 2 or 3 people get together and do projects together, maybe have several universities do similar projects and see what the outcomes are. Something that would be worthy of meta-analysis and things like that. So I don't know if I've made any sense, if I made myself clear or not, but that's just my idea.
Well,
And
Camille,
that's probably more appropriate for the future of the organization, but I didn't know if I'd get to say anything again.
Well, hopefully you will. But what you can't see in the audience is a lot of head nodding. And some of those heads are the steering committee members for the conference. So I suspect that advice will be taken. And actually, some of the questions that we have for the panel are, we'll get to in a little bit, but have to do with this question about what are some, things that you as researchers didn't get to, or what you see as sort of the next step. So we'll come back to those. So I'd like to ask the next question of Leo and Deb. And that's, why did you feel like it was important to be involved early in the days of CEO? So we just heard about, the founding of it, but obviously founding it is not enough. You need people to come and support it. And so I'd be interested in why, Leo and Deb, your take on that. Why was it important to you early on?
Deb, why don't you go ahead and start?
Okay, thanks, Leo. I like bullet points. Currently working with a bunch of practitioners, I found that my messages do better with bullet points oftentimes. So maybe I should use it with my students too. I don't know, but I have 5. I thought it was really important to share what we were doing and be informed of the work of other folks that were out there doing this good outdoor ed work, so that I could share it with my students, so I could take it back, but also encourage some of our students to come and be a part of that. So I thought that just being informed was really important. Maybe even before that, though, was the idea. I believe very strongly in the philosophy and what this group was trying to do. And I think, if people are going to put the work out to do stuff like this, then we need to jump in there and support it. And I felt like supporting it by physically being there, was a really a good thing to do at the time. And as we've seen technology evolve, I think there's other options currently, but I really believed in what we were trying to do. So wanted to be there to support it. I thought even when I was at Carolina, I was still doing a lot of stuff with youth development, particularly around camps, starting to look at some things now that get termed DEI. But I felt like it was really important that the informal setting of after school camps, things, and for me, particularly camp, would be represented here. I felt it was important to bring them in. We had lots of different groups being represented. And I thought that camp experience was really important to share the research that we were doing around that, particularly with the work I was doing with the American Camp Association. The 4th thing kind of grew out of those other ones, and it was just pure fun networking. I mean, it was a blast to come, and I met a lot of really great people. So the networking was important. And again, I felt it was really critical to network outside of our own little cliquey groups that we tend to get within academia. And so there were some other, people that were different. I didn't see it in RPA, or I didn't see, in some of our other professional meetings. So the networking was really important. And that kind of got to Camille's point about collaboration. There were collaborations that came out of sitting around a table, you're eating, you're sharing stuff, and you're just like, hey, that would be really cool. Let's go ahead and talk about that a little bit more. And then lastly, the 5th bullet point is, I just felt like, and I still do think that it's really important that we all find ways to contribute to the work. And I think that some of the things that grew out of our meetings, whether it's the book of abstracts, or whether, sharing our abstracts, whether it was, putting stuff into the journals, that it was important to get our work out and visible. But I also felt like that was not something I needed to hope somebody else did. I needed to step up and do some of that work. So those would be the 5 things that I think are important for coming originally. And I still believe it's important.
Thank you. Leo?
Well, Deb, you covered all the ones that I would be thinking of too, which is great. I think one of the things that I was hoping that CEO could do would be to provide an opportunity for young faculty and graduate students to present their research in a forum that was supportive and not highly critical. Many of the other research presentation opportunities that were available at those times usually involved part of a very large conference where the outdoor program folks were pretty outnumbered. And also the atmosphere in many of those research reporting sessions was very critical and not at all supporting or encouraging to a young faculty member or a PhD student. So I thought that one of the primary benefits that CEO provided was a relatively non-threatening, but still challenging and engaging opportunity for these young researchers to be able to present their research, receive constructive feedback, receive feedback in an informal way after dinner or over a beer or whatever, and then to receive encouragement from other more senior faculty that these kinds of studies are actually possible and that a young faculty member can do them and that there are outlets for them to publish those kinds of results. So I think CEO really did that. And I was here today for about 6 of the presentations in the afternoon and observing the interaction, kind of the informal interactions between the formal sessions. And I'm seeing exactly the same thing I saw in 1992. The CEO atmosphere is exactly the same. It's very supportive. And that's what I was hoping it would accomplish.
Well, and I can speak as a, somebody who was a grad student here and an early faculty member. I think that was the case. Thank you both. So the next question is for Carla and Mike. And it has to do with, what do you think CEO has done well? And maybe what are some of its challenges, opportunities to improve going forward, and more importantly, why for both of those?
Well, I can start out because I want to just kind of piggyback on what has been said in the first 2 questions. I think what CEO was able to do, 30 years ago back, I mean, it's hard to imagine now what it was like when we didn't have instant access to information, when we couldn't communicate with each other, when we couldn't just go online and, Google and find articles and things like that. I mean, there was just not a real good way for us to talk to each other. And so I think CEO provided that opportunity. And related to that was there were the beginnings of research in a lot of different organizations. AEE had a small research group going on. Camping had a small group. There were other small groups, but it wasn't really a real formal kind of thing that you could really feel like you could put it, a young person or a young faculty or grad student could put it down on their Vita, because it really didn't have much real research. It was, as someone said, it was embedded in a much bigger thing. And so, and places like NRPA weren't really interested in some of the camping social stuff. They were interested in the resource management. Anyway, so I think what CEO did great was to provide this forum, as people have mentioned, and so on. The other thing that I thought was really good that CEO did was we didn't have breakout sessions where people went off and listened to a set of presentations here and another set here and another set there. And at first, I kind of thought, well, I'm not sure I'm really interested in some of these other topics, but it was amazing to find out I actually learned a lot. And I felt I got a better understanding of this whole field of education in the outdoors by going to sessions that I wouldn't have chosen to go to, but because they were, sessions of the whole, I think that was really, really useful. Now, in the world we live in now, I don't know if people appreciate that in the same kind of way, but to me, what CEO did really well was to really try to put all of these different things that we're doing to try to make education in the outdoors better under one umbrella. And have a place where, regardless of what you were doing for research, you fit somehow into a bigger picture. So to me, that was really important. I think it's a challenge, though. It has been a challenge over the years because people have become more specialized, and so they want to go to their own special research sessions. And to me, it's very different to come to CEO because you're getting a bigger, broader picture. Plus, you've got all research as opposed to all kinds of other things going on. So I think that CEO has done that well, but I think it has been a challenge. And there were some years that we really hoped to get 25 or 30 people to come. It was hard sometimes to convince people they should come to this forum. But I think obviously the work has persevered, and clearly what seems to be going on this year is a great way to combine a lot of different aspects of what CEO has done well over the last 30 years.
Okay. And I just want to interrupt, since you folks can't see the audience, there are about 40 people here now. So we have a nice group of folks here.
And most of them are awake.
Well, I'll try to fix that with the next. I think I'll take right off of Carla's coattails as I did when we were together 30 years ago. It was an informal conference, but yet it was accountable. Even though we had a few people, we still held each other to kind of like the accountability. It was inexpensive. You could kind of fit it in your budget. And it brought colleagues normally, like I wouldn't go to conferences that Deb or Carla or Chris may go or Andy would go. This was a time I could kind of interact with scholars that weren't in kind of my area, but they were doing some very interesting research methods. Alan was always coming up with new things that were enjoyable to think. And that was really helpful for me, keeping myself broad as a researcher. Some of the challenges we're still facing is that we need to become more relevant and make a difference. We need to find ways that we take the hard work that people do and make sure that it gets implied. And I'm at a point in my career where I try to dedicate at least 30% of my time towards some critical social issue is affected by my research and making sure that happens. One of the things that was interesting is that as people criticized one another, there was a duty that seemed to be held by the person who was criticizing, that they would not abandon the person's work or the person that was there. They were responsible for helping them kind of cover up that hole that made it in the armor of the research project and help the researcher make that better and join together in a company that would produce and reinforce greater strength than it was initially there. And I think that's something that was always valued and seen as a value system, that if you said something that challenged someone, you were responsible as the challenger to make sure that you had something that could fill in the hole or help the individual in what you were doing. And I think that is something that was there. I think there was this idea of wrapping our colleagues in our interest, curiosity, and support and compassion. And we wanted to facilitate them to expectations and possibilities that they never thought they could achieve, so they could become the researcher they didn't know existed. And I think that was something that was there. And the other thing that was valued is that the most valuable researchers that I felt that we pointed to in the researchers were ones that continued to light the way, and in their methods, let the person know what they do made a difference. And to me, the best test of a researcher is to have the people who you're researching grow as people, so they become healthier, wiser, freer, more compassionate, and they become leaders in their communities through your research. And that was the duty, that what your research was to do, was to go beyond what you were doing and to empower the people being researched in your studies so they can make a difference in their communities. And that was, I think, achieved by all the people you're looking at on this day to day.
Well said, thank you. Just to give a heads up, I'm going to ask one more question to two of our panelists. And then, and Tim, if you're okay with this, I think it would be a good time to open it up to the audience for questions, both in person and online. But the next question is for Chris and Alan. We'd love to hear what some of your fondest memories are of CEO from over the years.
I guess I can start. Really, I look forward to the CEO conference every other year to go. When I first finished my doctoral work, I did not go straight into faculty. I went into administration and ended up being a dean of students. And then I ended up being a faculty member with the expectation that I do research. And so I always felt like I was behind in that area or that requirement as a faculty member. And going to CEO gave me the confidence through the interaction with really bright people, people that I valued their opinion, to get myself started. And after that, one of the first questions I'd ask any new graduate student was, well, what kind of research are you interested in and where do you see yourself presenting? And most of the time the answer would be, oh, I'm terrified of presenting. I said, okay, well, you're going to CEO the next time it happens. And, so start working and get prepared. And this is a group that you need to be in, and it's not very threatening, and it will get your foot in the water. And many of them have gone on to do really fine work since their first introduction to CEO. Beyond that, I'll tell you, some of the most fun memories, it kind of links to some of the earlier kinds of statements. It was fun. And I remember some of our icebreaker games. I mean, I came home from one conference and taught all my students about raccoon circles. I couldn't believe how much fun you could have with a piece of webbing. And so I used that. Had nothing to do with research, everything to do with fun and ice-breaking games. And so you brought stuff back from all aspects of the conference. I think for me personally, it was getting to know and getting to talk to people that I really respected in the field and could feel like they listened to me and were interested in what I was doing. And that meant so much to me and my confidence as a faculty member at the university.
Alan?
My fondest memory, and it stayed with me all these years, is I think the first time we met at Bradford Woods, and we were small enough so that we could squeeze into the living room of the manor house by the fireplace and just talk about the field, talk about what our thoughts were about potential research topics. And it has always stayed with me that we had a chance just to talk with one another rather than at one another.
Yeah.
And it was a distinct pleasure to move into that type of atmosphere as opposed to some of the other professional research organizations that, are either one ungodly boring or they're antagonistic with one another. So that has stayed with me. I liked the social atmosphere of the CEO. It seemed like it was, I was surrounded by people who were doers. They didn't just sit behind a desk and talk about things they thought were true, but they were actually oftentimes out in the field seeing if they were true or not. Certainly the connections that we all made there and continue to make, and this idea, and I felt like I was surrounded by people who had a extremely high level of energy, and they were invested in this field. They wanted this field to be successful.
Yeah.
They wanted it to grow.
Oh, you're back.
What can you ask for?
You went mute for a minute, but you're back. So if you want to,
Okay.
that last.
Nope, I'm done.
Okay. I'm just kind of curious before we open it up. How many people were in that living room?
Well, Mike, you were there too. We probably had maybe 20 or so.
Yeah, it was 20, and it was just such a great time for people just to let their guards down and just say, this is really what's happening. This is what's going on. And I think that was the genesis of a lot of good thoughts. There were a couple ice storms that locked us into Bradford Woods, and we didn't think we'd ever get out of there. And I think Gary Robb did it. He was upset because there was so much of an ice storm that the Indiana basketball team wasn't playing it that afternoon, so we missed the game. So
I would like to point out that, the Indiana basketball team played again today against MSU, and I'm not sure who won. Oh, actually, MSU did. I guess I did know. Okay, well, I would like to open it up to, that was actually more of a dig to my friend Andrew Bobelia, because we were talking about this earlier. He's a big Indiana fan. But I'd like to open it up to the room and to the people on Zoom for questions. And we have people monitoring that, but I would ask you can direct your question to any specific person or to the whole group. And then if we have time at the end, I might have one question to ask to all of you, just so you know what the process will be, but it looks like we have a hand. Yes.
Yeah, this question is from Mike Gass. I want to preface this by saying thank you for the work that you do in adventure therapy. I worked in the industry for 4.5 years, and I was a former client of a program, and I wouldn't be here as CEO had I not had that experience, so thank you for that. My question is what needs to be done or what is being done to help increase access to these outdoor behavioral health programs to people of lower economic status or lower socioeconomic status?
Can you hear that?
Yeah, I heard most of it. So, well, one of the things we've been lucky to get a $3.1 million grant to look at the effectiveness of adventure therapy or outdoor behavioral health care with adolescents that are depressed, has anxiety or substance use disorders. And we're using a experimental design where we're comparing short-term residential therapy to outdoor behavioral health care. And these experimental, my IRB is 109 pages long. Just to let you know what that entails. There usually all my other RBs are 3 pages, and this is. But the big thing is that insurance companies won't fund adventure therapy type programs unless there's a randomized gold standard study. So this is one of the things that I'm trying to do in a swan song, is to try to hit these pitches that we're getting from insurance companies and open that up to make that evolve. So we have to have, at least the Department of Labor actually spells out for the United States government that you need at least 2 randomized control study papers on a therapeutic intervention in order for it to be considered as fundable, and we're doing 3. So we're trying to make that happen. So the big thing for us is we're fighting battles with insurance companies, but slowly but surely hopefully we'll get there. And we help, one of the things we do is we help families who get denied reimbursement for their family. And what we've done in the last 4 years is return $14 million back to families, because we've been able to go and find these returns on denials that are made by insurance companies. So that's part of the thesis, and we're working really hard to make that happen.
Thank you. Okay, we have something from Zoom.
Question actually related to the last comment that Mike made. Where is the 3.1 million coming from? Who is the sponsor?
Did you hear that, Mike?
Yeah, sponsors are Family Foundation. Generally speaking, they're from families whose kids have gone to adventure therapy programs, and they've had just a wonderful experience there. And the families have come up and they actually have approached us to say, what do you need? And I said, well, there is this thing we need. And they say, well, how much will that cost? And I told them, I say, well, this part will cost $2 million. And they said, okay, that's good. We'll pay that. So then the biggest question I have now is I should have asked for more money. But we've been able to put that together. Katisas Foundation, there's foundations actually out of Oklahoma that have funded us. And those have been basically because of families who have had tremendous experiences on this. Unfortunately, we're trying to chase away the ghosts from past experiences where there were charlatans of adventure therapy who really led us down the wrong path. And there's been a lot of abuse reported, and justifiably so. Back in those times, there were situations that should have not happened. So that's one of the things, is saying, things have changed. We formed a coalition with the AEE to form a accreditation program that covers outdoor behavioral health care as a third party. AEE has entered into that with us.
Other questions? Yes, Jeremy.
Hey team, Jeremy Schultz here from Western Carolina University. What an honor to be here tonight. First of all, thank you all for different time zones for being here at the same time. So I was reading the paper this morning, the Wall Street Journal, and there's an opinion piece about it was shaming woke culture and the indoctrination within schools and universities. On the next page, it talked about REI using DEI initiatives to get rid of attempted union formation within REI. Western Carolina last week banned sensitivity trainings and Rainbow 101 because they were getting sued by Turning Point. How do y'all see this conversation evolving in your own reflective thoughts of the 20 people around that fire on that couch, right?
Could you hear that question?
Not very good.
Not very
Not
well.
very good. Okay, boy, that's a long question for me too. First, he would like to thank you all for being here. Secondly, he was reading the Wall Street Journal, and there were a few things in there, but one, there was an article criticizing the woke culture in universities. And the next page had something from REI talking about DEI. And what's the last part of the question, Jeremy?
So Carolina is banning training, DEI trainings based on litigation from Turning Point. So
so Western Carolina is going to ban DEI training. So sorry, keep going.
So how do we see this conversation evolving within CEO leisure?
Yeah, so how does this conversation continue to be involved with what we do here at CEO and the research that people in the room are doing and maybe even yourselves as well?
Well, I'll start. That's a huge question. I was able to sit in and hear Corliss's presentation last night, which I thought was fantastic. One of the questions in my mind, though, was there just seems to be so much backlash going on right now to some of the things that many of us have been trying to do for years and years. And maybe it's because it's more obvious than it used to be. It was more subtle before, and now maybe not so much. I really don't have an answer to the question, but I think that I think there's three levels to look at here. There's the personal level, the interpersonal level, how we interact with these kinds of problems and challenges. There's the organizational level, which relates to our universities, also relates to an organization like CEO. And then there's the structural, social, societal pieces of it. And it doesn't seem to me that there's a lot of continuity across all of those in some ways right now. Or I should say, there's just a lot of divisions among the way individuals think, organizations think, and society. So I think Corliss laid out, her 6 points about what we need to do. I think those are some things that we as an organization and we as individuals really need to think about. And hopefully we have some impact on society, but recognizing that unfortunately not everybody agrees with the directions that many of us think we probably should be taking, and the directions that we should be really thinking much harder about than we've necessarily thought about in the past.
Thank you, Carla.
I'd like to tag on to that because I'm putting on my practice hat now, and it's still a researcher hat as well. And that's my first point is I think when we look at research, there's a lot of research that's done outside of the university. Since I started ACA, there's a whole world of practice that's out there in that out of school time that deals with, camp, outdoor ed, outdoor recreation. And there are almost every youth organization has somebody that's in that role. So from my practice hat now, can tell you DEI is absolutely huge. All of us within practice, I coordinate a group of researchers, there's about 70 to 80 of us that belong and do research and evaluation in nonprofits right now. And all of us have huge pressures on us with DEI. And the good news about that is our funders are also supportive of that. I was sitting here thinking, ACA now, we're managing about $4.5 million in grants right now that all have DEI focus around it. So the world of practice is dealing every single day with trying to meet the challenges. And again, this is a youth development perspective that I have with ACA, but we have Spencer Foundation, who looks at funding partnerships between universities and nonprofits. Sometimes school districts. For us, it was ACA. The Lilly Foundation is doing that. The Margaret A. Cargill Foundation is funding a huge project right now with us. The Helmsley Foundation is, Wallace and Templeton. And if you have a DEI focus within your, nonprofit in particular, it's a very practical thing because we're trying to do the right thing around positive youth development. And we know COVID actually did us kind of a favor. It pointed out how important nature is for kids. It pointed out the importance of the development of SEL skill sets for kids developmentally. And I think that while some folks are pushing back, and we see that within schools and certainly the universities as well, that if you kind of twist that a little bit, that reality looks very different from practice. And so for me, I'm trying to be giving this the yay raw for what we're doing, because I think if we can manage to navigate some of that tricky political atmosphere within our research institutions, that we can partner with the practice side of our work and find some pretty successful things that's going on. If you hear that banging around, I'm sorry, we have a puppy and she's playing right now and I gotta go get her. But the point is that there's money out there right now to do the DEI work. And I can't think of anything that gets your chair more more energized than saying, hey, I think I have a partnership I want to pursue with this nonprofit. And we're going to look at getting some pretty decent funding possibilities. And it's going to focus on DEI and marginalized youth. And it's going to look at a whole gamut of things that, other people might find uncomfortable. But I mean, money talks. I hate to say that because I never wanted to ever admit that, but it really does do some things to help us balance out on the practice side and to help our practitioners as they're reaching out to all these different marginalized groups and trying to really bridge some of the things that, Corliss was even talking about last night.
Well, thank you.
There's one thing I want to just say this moment is that if you notice the people that are here, the women on this council are some of the greatest mentors I've ever had. And having them with me on my professional journey, combined with Betty Vandersmissen, Deb, Carla, all of you, Camille, it was just a sheer gift to my training and growth as a professional to have you in front of me, leading me the way, so I could kind of be on your side sometimes, and I could get there. So thank you sincerely, and this is why we need to be involved in including people of differing opinions, and it's so important. Thank you.
Chris, your screen flashed for a second. Were you going to say something about this or no?
No.
So Deb, I don't know if you're going to have to clean up your kitchen. I think your puppy ran through all your cupboards or something maybe. But do we have any other questions? I guess I have one that came up just that's not on the script that based on something you just said, Deb, with COVID and even before COVID, you talked about the benefits of nature as a result of COVID, but I've been thinking a lot, and partly because my kids are graduating high school, going into college, and then I think a lot of us see it with our college students. There's a real mental health crisis going on in this country, especially among that age group. And COVID has just thrown fuel on that fire on an already bad situation. And I'd be curious, your thoughts on the role of the people in this room and yourselves who do research in this area, what might be needed, and if you see that.
I'm going to just jump in real quick here because I'm sure there's some other folks who have. Within our ACA world, within this study, we really got thrown off with some of our data collection because of COVID. But it also opened up some new doors. And we're in the process of doing a longitudinal study. And I have a point back here for the future about looking at and raising a couple methodological things. But we do have the luxury of being in the middle of a 5-year longitudinal study with campers and staff. And so we had this kind of complete year break. And in this last year, camp started to come back on. You know what the number one challenge was besides getting staff? It was the emotional and mental health issues that were being dealt with. And it was dealt with the kids, which everybody talks about the kids, but they forget about our staff. Who are our staff? They're emerging adults. They're 18 to 25-year-olds who are really struggling with a lot of those same kinds of challenges that people keep talking about with our little kids. And so within some of the groups and some of the discussions that we've been talking about, I'll give you one resource you might want to look at around how to deal with emotional mental health issues with kids, but they also have some staff things. The CDC just put out a whole gamut of short video support things you can use in staff training. But the whole focus around this was around this emotional mental health challenges that were being confronted in these out of school time settings in particular, and with our young staff who were trying to help lead the kids through these challenges while they themselves were having some of the very same kinds of issues. So I would encourage you to get on there and look. They're kind of nifty. We had one of the presenters for this group that I work with just presented on it last week about how these tools were developed, how they're hoping to be picked up by young staff, by parents, by people that are important role models within our communities. And they're looking at a whole spin-off of things. National academies did a whole focus on that emotional and mental health. So if you need more info on that, I mean, I can get, I'll be happy to share afterwards with stuff, but it's a huge, huge issue that it's not going away. I think we are going to kid ourselves and we need to training.
Well, I'd like to come back to the script for a little bit, but change it up a little bit. I'd like to ask a question that was originally supposed to be for just two of you, but ask anybody who's comfortable to jump in on this. And that's name one thing you wish you would research but didn't get to. So it's in typical CEO fashion. We have a lot of people in their early careers. We have a lot of students here. What didn't you get to? And you think maybe it'll spark an idea for somebody else. Alan, were you going to say something?
Yeah. I have about 4 or 5 things. One is the idea of transferability. I know it's hovered around our field for a long time, but I want to know what I would be interested in knowing is when a person takes an outdoor education course, are they more or less like or the same in terms of likelihood willing to go out and make a difference in their society in whatever form they could take? I think a thing that we've heard more and more about now is the effect of nature and natural attributes on different types of outcomes. I think we should continue our exploration in the bio aspects of health as they pertain to outdoor education. And and one thing I would like to promote is inviting other disciplines to come to the CEO and provide a linkage to what we're finding to what they understand in their own profession and how we can draw those linkages across disciplines.
Thank you. Others?
I can speak to that as well. Before I retired, I did a pilot study on stress recovery in an indoor environment versus an outdoor environment. And there's a lot more to that than just what I said, you know, like what kind of outdoor environment makes a big difference. But I've actually found no difference in that pilot study. And so I did a lot of research and talked to a lot of people to try to figure out why that was. And what I was measuring was primarily was cortisol via saliva. You don't have to be a biology major to do this. It's easy to do. You can learn how to do it from reading other studies that are published. And cortisol is a good indicator, not just for stress, but for other problems as well. I would think, I haven't read anything specifically about this, but I would think that it relates to depression. And I would encourage people to go with something like that. I learned something though when I found no difference, and that was how to connect people with nature. Just because someone goes for a 2 or 3 hour walk in the woods doesn't mean they connect with nature. And there are ways to encourage that to happen. So I would encourage some of you to take up this gauntlet and give it a shot, and get in journals that are medical journals. Use Medline to do your searches. Don't just stick with PsychLit and things like that. I don't even know if those things still exist. There are probably other names now, but I think that's an area that's ripe for discovery. There's a lot of work being done in it already. Check with colleges of architecture and things like that. You'll find some of those studies there.
When you were collecting saliva, did you have a 109-page IRB application?
I did not.
Okay. Others, what kind of things? I'd certainly like to hear from you, Leo, too, on this question. What things did you not get to, or that you maybe wish you had?
Well, I think I wrote a paper several years ago about and asked the question, have we answered all the easy questions? I think we did answer a lot of the easy questions because of the we didn't have that much research about things like the importance of nature and so on. And so we were able to describe what happens and so on. But I think the harder questions and the things that I wish that I had did more with, that in some ways I wish that I were still researching, is really digging a lot deeper into how these things happen. Not just that nature is good, but what is it about nature? What is it about an experience? What is it about, you know, whatever it happens to be that helps us better understand, not that just nature is important, for example, there's lots of other things, or not just that women are oppressed or women are not equal, but there's a lot more to it. And so I think the challenge is really to go beyond description, because we know so much stuff by description. We just don't know the mechanisms of how it works in people's lives. And I think that's what I wish that I had been able to do more of.
So you're leaving us the difficult questions. Is that what I mean?
That's right. Yeah. We had a chance to answer the easy ones. In retrospect, that's the way it feels to me. The descriptions were easy. It's the next step that I think is the real challenge for us. And sometimes when I read, and I still review a lot of papers, and I read, they're just telling me the same thing that we've known for 30 years. I kind of go, no, this is not what we need more of. We need to go to the next level of depth about these things.
Well, based on the grad students I met today, I think they're up for the challenge. So.
Great, that's excellent.
Others?
I think for me, often when I read studies, outdoor research and stuff, there were small ends. Groups were small. We were drawing conclusions from, one group experience of 12 people. And I think if I had to do it over again, and if I had the luxury of not kind of feeling like I had to go on to the next project, would be to repeat sort of what Camille said at the very beginning, to redo this study with larger ends and be more solid in the conclusions and the outcomes. I think the nature of what we do kind of forces us into looking at small group experiences. If something happens, we're ecstatic and we say, see, I told you so. Now we'll go on to the next thing, even if it's not a big enough platform from which to launch ourselves into the next thing. I just think we need more information. Even though we have described a lot of stuff, I think looking at methodology, some more qualitative that allows you to go deeper rather than just surf the information. There's so much happening now. And I think now in the world, there's complexities that feed into everything we do in the outdoors, climate change and access and regulations and all kinds of things that really confound whatever we've already found out about. It's much more complex than I think we even thought about. And so you pull one string, but there's a million strings to look at. So I think replication and dual research agendas are really important.
Andy, it looked like you were going to say something too.
Yeah, and Chris just did. One of them is replication studies. We had questions today. This worked at Outward Bound. Would it work somewhere else? And so to get generalizability of results, replication is one way with smaller end studies. So that would sort of be a thing. Don't be afraid to do those. In terms of my own personal one, my doctoral dissertation dealt with outdoor skills instruction, comparing methods of teaching backpacking knowledge and skills. And I sort of walked away from that line of research into everything else I've done over the last 40 years. And I felt maybe I walked away from it too soon, that outdoor skills they are at the foundation of a lot of courses. And in terms of, the other outcomes that happen in an outdoor pursuits-based course, rely on that foundation of skills, and to make sure that we learn better how to teach that effectively. I'm not sure it's the most important agenda for the field, but in terms of an area of maybe I missed out or left that behind too quickly.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if I have one more question I'd like to ask them all to answer briefly, but before I get there, other questions from the audience?
I'd like to hear from Leo, though.
Oh, I did too. Yeah, I forgot. There. I'm looking at the screen. I'm not looking to my left. Sorry, Leo.
Well, before I retired, I was doing some work with American Indian tribal groups and looking at how American Indian tribal groups use surrounding national forests and national parks as outdoor recreation activities and outdoor education activities and cultural activities. And at that time, I was having some difficulties figuring out, okay, what are the outdoor recreation activities as opposed to what are the cultural activities? And so I would have liked to have had a better chance to do more research looking at that particular construct. The whole issue of outdoor education, outdoor recreation, and cultural activities, and what falls into which category, and how important are outdoor recreation activities to the cultural life of particularly to American Indians. And so that was one topic I wish I would have had a better chance to take a look at.
Thank you. Okay, so the last thing I'd like to ask you all, and requires a little bit of reading here for me. So the CEO website notes that founders believe the coalition would fill a need in the outdoor education community for an organization that would, quote, would unite outdoor associations, institutions, businesses, and agencies to better serve both professionals and consumers in the outdoors. And so I'd like to know from each of you, what is the one thing that we as people interested in outdoor education to do to make a significant difference in this regard? Well, that was a tough question to ask. Okay, you don't all have to answer it, but you know, if some of you do. And I see Tim laughing. This is Tim's question. I'd just like to point out. So if you're angry, look at Tim.
It's awfully late in the session.
And it's late in the session. Yeah, that's true.
Well, there's a couple of things, and I put those in the chat box that I
Okay.
think would be things to go with. And the piece that I see is based out of the work of Robert Greenleaf on servant leadership. And if we take his ideas and bend them a little bit and see that your role as a researcher is not only to find outcomes for a study, but to transform the various communities that you work with. And don't take that responsibility lightly, and keep that in your mind and heart as you go down your path in the profession.
Well said. Thank you.
Well, I would just add, we have this wonderful entree to society now about nature because of everything that's been talked about because of the COVID and people returning to nature. We've got in the national park, we've got huge management issues because of it, because everybody wants to be outdoors and we've got to deal with that. But I guess what I think we should think about in terms of making a difference is we need to capitalize on this interest in nature and what it's all about. But then we also need to look at who's included, who's not included. How do we provide for the immense interest in this area? And my biggest concern about the national park is that Rocky Mountain National Park is being overrun with people. We're only going to be able to be good for those people at Rocky if we have lots of other opportunities in the outdoors as well. So I think that that we need to make a difference by acknowledging the value of this, but also working to make sure that people have all kinds of outdoor opportunities, whether it's in their backyard, whether it's their city park, or whether it's a national park.
Thank you.
I think I'd like to take a stab at that. Back to my bullet points here again as we were talking, but I would really hope that we would stop talking just to ourselves. I think that it's a noble thing for us to try and do all these really to advance the body of knowledge and to do the critical work that I believe that we are doing. But I think we fall short in sharing that. And I mean sharing that at the broadest sense. We published in our journals that we think are going to help us get tenure. And then, it's like, well, where do we translate to practice here? If we're doing all this really great work, how many people really read those journals? Now, I'm not saying don't publish because you want to be able to have some kind of career, but I mean, can't we do a little bit better job of reaching out and crossing out into other disciplines, into maybe journals that are not those top tier all the time, but we know that practitioners are reading in there. I think at ACA, we kind of came up with this little idea, and I really like it. And I know I'm a weird duck because I spent 20 years at Carolina, and now I spent 17 years at ACA. So I walked this really weird line of research and practice. And my research is what I did at ACA. They hired me to come in and create a research environment there. So to me, this translation piece is just huge. And I see all this great work that we do, but we don't really get out there and share it in a way that makes it really usable for our practitioners, particularly our outdoor world. We know we have people in and out all the time. It's a very transitional kind of audience sometimes when we look at our practitioners. But I would really hope that we just would start adopting this idea. We said our research is only as good as the practice that we can influence. And our practice is only as good as the research we choose to use. And so I don't think there's a top down on any of this. I think that it's this spiral thing that we kind of lose sight of because we get kind of elitist in the academy and the practitioners kind of thumb their nose at researchers. And I think we both got to just kind of get over that. Let's get out there and really make the thing work for the people that we're trying to help, whatever it is that we're trying to do there. And then lastly, that ties into that, is I think we have to tell all the stories. I mean, I have done more questioning this last probably 4 or 5 years than I think I've ever done in my entire career, just because I've gotten so much more pulled into our DEI work. It makes me question our theories. I mean, how did we come up with those theories? Were they built on white people? Were they built on a male perspective on this? Some of the things that Corliss raised last night are things that I continue to kind of struggle with. But at ACA, I know we've done a lot of work, and we're like, wow, we're doing some longitudinal studies. We've never had that great a track record with longitudinal work because it's so expensive. But we're doing it right now. And you know what it is? It's raising up all these additional questions. It's like you don't find the answer because there is no the answer. And so what it leads to is this like, well, if we have an impact on these folks that come out into nature and take part in our programs, what are their stories though? What folks? How do we impact them? We're not impacting them the same. We need to have a little bit more person-centered approach to the way we do our analysis and we collect our data. And this person-centered approach to me is really, really intriguing. So, that's kind of where I am on all this. I don't have any great answers, and all you folks sitting there getting ready to start your careers. I mean, that's like, wow, this is just so wide open. I'm excited for you because you're going to go out there and do the things that we didn't get to do. So that's kind of where I sit on that.
Well, I would like to just take this chance to thank you, and for a couple of reasons. But first of all, what a great way to sort of cap off this great conference is by having you all here. And I'd like to thank you all for being here and for taking the time. And so there's that thank you. But I'd also like to thank you all for the work that you did over the years and the commitment you had to make this happen so that we could be here and experience such a wonderful conference as we have today. And to go home energized with new ideas that we've gotten from you, sharing with us tonight, and from each other around the dinner tables. And we're about to have a beer. I'm sure the conversations will continue to go from there. And so just really heartfelt thanks. And maybe we could have a little, you see them, there are thousands of people giving you a standing ovation. It's really quite amazing. Show them. Okay. Yeah. Well, thank you all. For those of you in the room, I think there are some housekeeping things. Andrew, you're going to take over for that.
Yeah, we have a raffle and a couple final announcements.
And you're to hear about the raffle or not, but you all for.
I'm going to go have a beer.
Well, Brad, on behalf of the group, I'd like to thank you and the organizing group for the fine job you all have done on this conference. Thank you.
Yeah. Well done. I agree. They've worked.
Thank you, everybody.
It's gone very smoothly. They've done a great job. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Did a good job. That worked out. That worked out well.
That wasn't sure.
Yeah, not me either. Worked out well.
I felt a little bad that we Tim did all the work of it. I was like, I'm back.